The views expressed on the Final Straw Radio do not necessarily reflect those of Asheville FM, Friends of Community Radio, or any of the affiliate radio stations airing the show. Airing first on WSFM-LP 103.3 in Asheville, North Carolina, this is The Final Straw, and I'm Bursa Goodness. This show will later be archived at thefinalstrawradio.noblogs.org, and you can email us with questions or suggestions at thefinalstrawradio@riseup.net. Also, if you're interested in rebroadcasting any episode or segment, you're free to do so. Just send us an email and let us know. You can find radio-friendly versions of this show at 59 minutes in length by visiting archive.org and searching for the collection called The Final Straw. If you care to, you can send us letters at The Final Straw, P.O. Box 6004, Asheville, North Carolina 28816. This show is brought to you by Firestorm Books. Located at 610 Haywood Road, Firestorm Books is a worker-owned cooperative in Asheville specializing in offbeat, underground, and independent literature. You can find a sample of Firestorm's catalog of books and zines, plus a full calendar of events at their website, firestorm.coop. This week on The Final Straw, we're airing two conversations, in addition to a segment by Sean Swain. First, you'll hear from two organizers of the 2018 Another Carolina Anarchist Bookfair, or ACAB, which will be happening in Asheville, North Carolina from June 22nd to 24th of this year. They talk about the project of book fairs, what's up and coming generally this year, dealing with conflicts in public anarchist events, and other things. More on the project can be found at acab2018.noblogs.org. Later, we'll hear from an anarchist named Tristan who lives in Yogyakarta, a special feudal region on the island of Java in Indonesia. We talk about the recent May Day riot and repression that followed, including the case of Brian Valentino, also known as Uchil. Tristan also tells a little bit about the history of anarchism in different parts of Indonesia, some tendencies and ways of engaging there among anarchists, mega projects involving the feudal sultan governing Yogyakarta as a special region, and resistance to the sultan and his rule, and a lot more topics. If you'd like to contact the Anarchist Black Cross / Anti-Authoritarian Solidarity of Yogyakarta and make a donation, the email is palanghitam@riseup.net. That's PALANGHITAM@riseup.net. Also, stay tuned to the podcast for a longer version of both of these conversations.
Here is an update from the Appalachians Against Pipelines social media, which was posted 2 days ago. Quote, earlier this morning on day 12 of the Skypod on Pocahontas Road in the Hellbender Autonomous Zone, aka the Jefferson National Forest, Fern was extracted and arrested. Law enforcement began arriving to join the Skypod's existing 24-hour watch before 6 a.m. For a couple of hours, they discussed extraction, suited up in climbing gear, and attempted to coax Fern down, but she refused to give in to their intimidation. Shortly after 8 a.m., a cherry picker drove up the road. By 8:30, Fern was on the ground, handcuffed, and arrested. Although the blockade of this pipeline access road has been removed, the fight is far from over. The Mountain Valley Pipeline remains a dangerous project, installed by force and part of a network of dead-end disasters for water, climate, communities, and ecosystems. So before MVP and law enforcement even begin to breathe a sigh of relief, thinking they are one step closer to their goal of padding the pockets of executives at the expense of this forest and the lives of all along the route, let's show them that they have not won. Let's remind them that this pipeline is not yet built, that it is not a foregone conclusion. Let's prove that they have not extinguished the flame of resistance. If you've been watching the efforts and sacrifices of the people confronting the MVP, if you've been grateful to know that this pipeline isn't getting through without a fight, now is the time to move forward with actions of your own. None of us can do this alone. End quote. If you want to donate to Fern's and others' legal costs, you can go to bit.ly/support MVP resistance. To get connected with these efforts, go to bit.ly/AAP intake form. And you can follow them on social media by searching Appalachians Against Pipelines on any platform. And here is another on behalf of Familia TQLM. Following the recent murder of Roxana Hernandez at the hands of ICE agents, the organization Familia TQLM, Trans and Queer Liberation Movement, is organizing a national day of action against ICE to end trans detention and to call attention to the dangers forced upon trans, gay, and queer people in detention. This day of action will take place this Wednesday, June 6th. Roxana Hernandez was a 33-year-old trans woman from Honduras, and her passing is one of the most recent examples of the specific threats that immigration and customs enforcement pose to LGBTQ people. A recent study found that LGBTQ people are 97 times more likely to face sexual assault and sexualized violence at the hands of ICE agents while imprisoned, as well as facing conditions akin to torture, being held in freezing cells or ones that are dangerously hot, and being denied life-saving medication, as in the case of Roxana Hernandez. If you would like to connect with this action on June 6th, you can follow the hashtag Justice for Roxana, and her name is spelled ROXSANA, or email info@familiatqlm.org. To read the full article on conditions facing LGBTQ detainees, you can go to our show notes or blog post, where we will post the full link.
And now some words from anarchist prisoner Sean Swain.
What you say, what you say, what you say, what? We'll call like a
Bursts recently returned from world travels to resume new episodes for the Final Straw radio show. Burst is something of a celebrity among the global dumpster fire and ski mask demographic, you know. And for the last few years, despite his best efforts, changing his phone number, then moving and leaving no forwarding address, and then those ridiculous restraining orders, he can't seem to get rid of me. So I think of myself as something of his sidekick. You know, like a Tonto to his Lone Ranger, or maybe a Robin to his Batman, a Pinky to his brain. That being the case, I couldn't very well have Burst gallivanting all over this dangerous and inhospitable world without me. That would be madness. But the problem arises that I'm held currently at a level 3 prison that doesn't provide furloughs for captives to go on European junkets to promote radio shows. And that means I couldn't go with him physically, at least not in my normal human body. So, what we did, we raised funds for me to travel in effigy. We constructed a replica of me, one that looks almost just like me, made up of inflated tubing and rag stuffing, colored with magic marker and duct tape together. It has an amazing likeness to me. If not for the fact that I blink and breathe and move and talk, you wouldn't be able to tell us apart. My effigy sat next to Burst on the flight over. Just so happens, I sat in front of a 7-year-old who kicked the back of my seat for hours. Burst ate my complimentary bag of peanuts and drank my soda. Not much you can do about it when your arms are cardboard and your hands are inflated rubber gloves. When we first landed, I was taken off the plane and subjected to humiliating cavity searches. I was interrogated extensively, but I didn't tell them anything. I mean, I really didn't tell them anything. Paper mache has nothing to say. That's when Burst first told me he didn't want to travel with me. Well, not the first time, but I could tell this was the first time he really meant it. He said I was drawing too much attention and making him too visible, as if nobody's ever seen folks traveling Europe in effigy before. Anyway, we split up. I got a separate room. I went my way and he went his. So I don't know what he did, but you can soon check out the selfies that my effigy shot all over Europe. In Greece, I hung out with radicals and we tied bandanas around our faces and threw Molotov cocktails at the cops. I got so close to a burning cop car that the rubber glove burst and friends had to replace my hand. I kissed the Blarney Stone in Ireland. Well, in effigy. I might be the first effigy to kiss the Blarney Stone. In Spain, I went to a soccer game and we got really drunk and went streaking across the field. Cops chased us. It was awesome. The only bad thing about it, nobody had bothered to make my effigy anatomically correct. So even though I went streaking, no one was even mildly shocked because I had no genitals. I think for future reference, if Burst is going to drag me all over the globe, the least he can do is give me a set of lifelike genitals. I don't think that's too much to ask. In Italy, I led a march that turned violent, and the cops bashed our brains in with billy clubs. I was the first one struck. Of course, cops didn't bash my brains in because I didn't have any brains. Turns out Burst filled my effigy head with candy. So when cops bludgeoned me, thousands of Skittles and M&Ms and gumballs flew everywhere. It was probably the most delightful pounding to the head I've ever taken. At some point, Burst and I met back up, and when he saw what a sad state I was in, he apologized, and we spent the remainder of a lovely trip. I think there are some photos of us on the plane ride back. I'm the one with the head caved in and a hand made out of a coat hanger, the handsome, silent one with no genitals. At any rate, I think I can speak for both of us when I say our travels were quite rewarding, and I returned feeling refreshed, renewed, and inspired by the level of resistance to tyranny we witnessed all over Europe. I hope to make the trip again whenever Burst continues his travels, only I hope to have genitalia next time. Never can tell when you need to strip down and go streaking, or maybe encounter some hot chick in effigy also traveling the world. You just never know. This is anarchist prisoner Sean Swain, the real one, not the popular one with a head full of candy. If you're listening, you are the resistance.
You can write to Sean Swain at Sean Swain, 243-205, Warren CI, P.O. Box 120, 5787 State Route 63, Lebanon, Ohio, 45036. Updates on his situation and more writings by Sean can be found at seanswain.org.
I'm joined by a couple of the organizers for the Asheville Anarchist Bookfair coming up, the Another Carolina Anarchist Bookfair, ACAB 2018. Do y'all care to... ACAB 2018, 18 ACAB? So firstly, why the hell are you doing this? Is it the fame? Is it the glory? The riches? Why are you organizing a book fair?
Well, last year we did our first one, and it went really well, so we decided to do it again. That's the first thing.
And we were inspired by our friends and comrades in the Triangle who had previously done iterations of ACAB, which they called, I believe, Another Carborough Anarchist Book Fair for a few years, and there hadn't been one for a while, and the need for one, I think, just became really apparent to me and a few other people, and it was all downhill from there, and here we are.
And Asheville has a pretty special anarchist community that have been doing a lot of events and organizing, so it seemed like a good place to gather people from across the region, and also across the world.
But what is it about a book fair that makes you want to do this? What do you get out of it?
Well, besides the fact that there's like publishers who can and distros that can share their stuff, and we can like talk about the capitalist aspect of that.
Oh, we will.
What makes our book fair really exciting, and all book fairs, are the offerings of workshops and panels and talks. It's a place to share resources and information, and to engage in the struggle in another way than, in the streets.
Yeah, I think it's like a really important space of encounter where people who are engaged in a variety of struggles throughout Southern Appalachia and throughout the country can come together and share information and skills and resources, ideas, and also build network and community to like better engage and resist moving forward.
And if we think about all the stuff that we're up against constantly, in terms of state repression, state violence, gentrification, displacement, all the forms of terror. It's really important, I think, to come together in community building exercises like this, so that we can not only share the information, but like hold space together and like know we have comrades and that they're out there in other places.
Right, because it's not only a space where people are selling or distributing materials for their organizations or publishing projects or like zine presses, but it's also a space of learning, and we include a series of parties and shows and also like places where we can play and like come together in other social formations, and I think it's just a really important and timely thing.
Yeah, I think a lot of friendships are made at the book fair. We've offered to help situate people with housing if they ask for it, which makes new connections often. So there's a lot of like relationships that are built that extend beyond the book fair moment.
Right. The person who stayed with you last year was just like, I want to stay with this person again.
Yeah, we became friends, maybe a little bit of an odd couple for a moment. I'm excited to have them back.
So what can people expect out of the book fair this year? What's on the agenda?
Well, we were trying to focus on decentering whiteness in anarchism as one of the kind of discursive things of the book fair. So
there's a number of like speakers and workshops on that topic. Our keynote speaker is William, who's releasing his new book through AK Press called Black is Resistance this week, I think, actually, which is really exciting. And he will be speaking Saturday night.
So that's William C. Anderson, and the book was co-authored by Zoe Samudzi, right?
Yes.
Right, and they also wrote The Anarchism of Blackness. This book that's coming out is, I think, like a kind of furthering of the topic of that article. So I'm touching on what anarchism has for blackness and in relation to black liberation movements and black resistance. And since our city in particular, Asheville, but also like North Carolina across the board has been a site over the last year of multiple incidents of state violence against black and brown folks. I think it's really important to like give space for an anarchist response to these things.
Right. And another thing our book fair is focusing on is like bringing together and highlighting like the regional struggles in Appalachia. So we have some people coming to speak from the Mountain Valley Pipeline struggle. We have people who are going to be doing a report back from the Defend Durham and the toppling of the Confederate statue. We have some people who will be coming to speak about Charlotte Uprising and then other various things that are like local and important in the Appalachias and Asheville.
We have a panel of strippers from New Orleans who are going to talk about the organizing that they've done in resistance to a kind of crackdown on sex workers in the city. And, rural organizing against racism is one of the things, and mutual aid disaster relief.
Yeah, and also a nice panel from our anti-repression committee to talk about a lot of the like repression we've been seeing in the past year, which spans everything from grand jury resistance to the No DAPL to J20 and beyond.
And another focus, we have a few different events that are talking about solidarity with Palestine and Palestinians. And I'm hoping that will lead to good conversations that kind of relate the settler colonial situation that we live in and the ones that they live in as well.
So that's a lot of the workshops and panels and presentations. What about extracurricular activities?
Well, of course we're going to have a punk show one night.
It's actually a really exciting punk show, though. It's a North Carolina showcase, so all of the bands are local from around the state, not just Asheville. It's pretty awesome.
That's cool. And just another shout out, because Asheville's a location for a lot of places, like there's the Pansy Fest that happens in August, so people should come back for that, which is a festival of DIY bands.
Queer and trans, hardcore, punk,
yeah,
etc.
And then we have a dance party on the second night of the book fair.
Yeah, it's going to be really exciting. At the Lazy Diamond, everyone's favorite haunt. And then Sunday, kickball.
And a waterfall hike.
And
a Jeopardy game?
Oh, that's on Thursday.
Yeah, if you're coming in early, and there's going to be a punk Jeopardy game, and that's going to be a fundraising event for two of the people who are facing state repression in Charlotte in the aftermath of the Charlotte Uprising, Glow Merriweather and Raekwon Borum. So come to that if you're in town and help us help them.
So how is the book fair this year going to look different from last year, since this is the second?
After last year, we requested feedback from some of our participants to see like what went well for them and what they would like to see happen, and we took that very seriously. Some of the feedback we received was that we wished that we could have 2 days of vending, and we wish there were less concurrent things so we could attend all of it, and sometimes you really do just have too much of a good thing. So we try to take that seriously, and we streamlined our schedule. There still are a few things that will be happening concurrently, but not quite as much.
You'll still have to make some decisions, sorry. But it won't be between, like, you know, among like 3 or 4 options, just maybe 2.
Yeah.
That's way more reasonable, less FOMO,
Yeah.
I think. How are you going to be funding the book fair? Or how have you been funding the book fair? Because like some, on the recent trip that I took, some of the gathering engagements that I attended had university funding that they were pulling in, or I know like some projects in France get some degree of like government assistance,
Yeah.
which is weird. Anarchist projects, and they get a lot of for it
That'd be
too.
fun.
This one's all community and participant supported. Like, most of our money comes from 3 sources, I would say, if I had to like define them. One would be the benefit shows that members of our community throw for us. The other would be from the tabling fees that we ask people who will be having table space during vending times to like pay for us, which is all sliding scale. And then the other one is from t-shirt sales, and our t-shirts are designed by really talented local artists in our community.
Yeah, we make sure that our shirts are really awesome, so people want them. And then we can spread everyone's money around and make a book fair.
And where does the money get spent?
We have to rent space for the vending and the workshops and tables. Also, what else do we spend money on?
We try to compensate as many people for travel as we can. It's really difficult as all of our funds are raised by us, but we do our best.
And then if we have leftover money, since we've decided that this is going to be a recurring thing, we like put it towards the next year.
Mm-hmm.
There's probably like printing costs and...
Yeah, there's tons of other small fees that follow, but like between the cracks that you don't really think about, like certain materials, and yeah, definitely printing.
So I imagine these are really good networking tools for organizers and attendees to like have a chance to have cool conversations with random people, and kind of like, I know I experienced last year that having the book fair here really brought a lot to the community. It brought a lot of conversations. It brought people in from the street to check out stuff they might not have come across otherwise, especially in a busy, like, tourist-heavy part of town with open doors. And also it even, like, brought us a couple of new folks who moved into the community and stayed, which is really awesome. But if someone's thinking of making a book fair happen where they are, what are some of the considerations or resources that you might suggest for them?
I think like one of the reasons our book fair worked so well was because there were people working together on a lot of projects already, so that there was a little bit of like, you know, infrastructure. It seemed to me like it would be hard to just like invent one in a place where there wasn't other stuff going on. So using the kind of resources that are already there to pull people who are interested in making something like this happen, like that's how our kind of organizing collective came together, to people knowing each other from other projects and wanting to do this.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like, I think that's like super necessary. If you just like put one in the middle of nowhere, it might not be, and I don't mean middle of nowhere in terms of the space, but if there's not a lot happening in terms of that kind of organizing or whatever. There's a paradox, I think, at play too, because like one of the horrible things about Asheville is that it's like, you know, all of the kind of money and interest is going into making this a tourist town for breweries and outdoor activities. Like it's like a sort of semi-retirement community or Airbnb place. So like we're sort of participating in that in a way by making a book fair happen, because we're getting people from out of town who are going to come and sell stuff. And I think that probably has something to do with why it works, because people do want to come to Asheville for whatever reason. I mean, it's beautiful, but the city itself is kind of like, you know, a typical neoliberal hellhole for many people. So yeah, that's something that I think about. Like, we're doing this thing that I think gains something for us in terms of organizing and solidarity and resource sharing and relationships, but it's like also on the kind of cusp of these other things that we're, you know, supposedly working against. So that's something I would also think about if you're trying to make a book fair. Like, you know, how does it fit within the landscape of where you're, you know, organizing, and what's going on there. In a way, Asheville, I think, works as a good spot for the book fair because of the kinds of struggles that are going on here, as opposed to other places around the region. Like, this might be a little bit more of a place that we can like come together to like to discuss ideas, because there's not like the same kind of daily struggle. But that's also partially because I think the anarchist community is a little bit removed.
Like you mentioned, bringing people into town and like centering around a commercial exchange, and it is a touristy city as we've brought up. How does it differ from the paradigm of just like drawing people in for tourism? Like, I mean, do you charge for the events? Is there housing offered?
Yeah, we have the events are free except for the benefits. We ask people. I guess we don't turn away people, but we ask people to donate money, and those either go towards the book fair or towards comrades.
I believe the donation events go to compensate some of the bands and artists and DJs who are performing.
Right. And we try to help people out with housing as much as possible. So that makes it different. Like, I've organized university academic conferences, and they're super expensive. They don't usually look for housing, and they don't always like help people out. They're not really accessible. So this, I think, is much more accessible.
And I also think that like the context of the book fair is a little bit different. So like, while there will be projects that are like selling things, maybe some will be donating things. I feel like a lot of the money gets reinvested in the struggle and like gives back to the community. So it's not people just accumulating like capital or power for themselves, but to like reinvest it either in Asheville or back in the communities from where they came.
Yeah, to the extent that we all have to try to find a way to survive in a money economy that makes it nearly impossible, like, this is a way for people to support different projects that some people survive off of, or projects that people do with their, free time, and put their like heart and soul into. So there's money involved, but it does feel like it's kind of spreading it around within the sort of community.
Yeah, some of the vendors that are coming can be like well-known, recognized publishers such as AK Press or PM Press, but there's also a lot of like smaller community-based projects such as
Sprout
Distro, Causerie Publishing, which is a Pacific Northwest prisoners supporting zine distro. There's a Warzone. They're really exciting. Vegan and straight edge queer distro from outside of Chicago. There is Honeysuckle Press, which is a really fun sex worker supporting zine and item distro. They make really cool stuff.
And then also like, different groups are going to be there with their like representing what the work that they do and giving information about that. So it gives people a sort of platform for the work they're doing and allows people to plug in with different kinds of action. And I think like one other thing I think is worthwhile talking about is that though there is a sort of like economic model that a book fair runs on, there's like a need for the kind of space of analysis and building of information and making of knowledge that happens within the book fair or in the work that goes into book fair. So people presenting their work or selling books that talk about things. I think that we need that as well as the like struggle in the streets or whatever else we're doing.
So last book fair seems pretty successful. Anarchist Bookfairs, however, have been a site of drama and violence in recent years, from the SF Bay Area to Los Angeles, from Seattle to New York, from Houston to London and Bristol. They've at times been the sites of attempted Nazi invasions, conflicts over the right political stance about Kurds in Syria, fights over publications, including misanthropic eco-extremists who claim murders, tablers being thrown out because of personal beef. Some of these blow-ups include a buffet of bad actors like trans-exclusionary radical feminists sowing division and trans-misogyny, creeping Maoists and national anarchists, again attempted Nazi attacks. Not to curse the event, but do you all have plans for conflict resolution at the book fair?
Yes, we have both plans for escalation and de-escalation based on what the situation calls for. We have a very solid and trusted crew of people who have come together. There will be at least 2 individuals per book fair site at all times, whether it's the vending sites or the places where speakers are happening or at any of the parties. And we're taking that very seriously because I guess I will speak to external threats rather than interpersonal threats at this moment. We're taking that very seriously because of the increase of like fascist and Nazi and outside agitator threats over the past few years. We want to make sure that the book fair is a safer space for people to come and feel like that they can engage with it in ways that are positive for them. Because of that, we're going to be instituting a policy of no recording, whether that's audio or video or using your phone. So please respect that and to respect the safety of the participants in our book fair. Members of the de-escalation crew will be marked, and it will be obvious who they are. So if you're having any problems, you can find some of them, and they will try to help in the best ways that they can. Do you want to speak to the more interpersonal?
We are considering this an anti-oppression space, and also we take very seriously people's feelings of safety around the people that they're making community with. So we've specifically uninvited or unwelcomed people that we know cause harm, and we're telling people that if there's someone there that is making them feel unsafe in any way, not just in the kind of Nazi threat but interpersonal way, that they can come to one of our de-escalation crew members, and we will help sort that out and create a safer space for them. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen, obviously, but we hope that this year will go off without a hitch, which last year pretty much did too.
Mm-hmm. Among the other things that has been offered, at least in part, is childcare. Could you say a few words about that?
It's offered.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we have some people who are working on childcare, and if you are in need of childcare during the book fair, you should contact us, and we can put you in direct contact with the people doing the childcare.
Yeah, try to do that ahead
crew.
of time. If you anticipate needing childcare, maybe shoot us an email at acab2018@riseup.net.
Yeah, just so we know what the needs are and we can provide it for the right times, etc. Because we're organizing, multiple people's schedules around this. But this is another way that we're trying to make it accessible.
Do you have a date probably when you're going to be releasing the schedule, or will it be the weekend of at the welcome table?
I think that this year we will release the schedule ahead of time so people can start making arrangements to attend the workshops and speakers and panels that they're really excited about, if they can't come for the whole thing. Because I know some people who are local have to work during the weekend, and I would love for them to be able to make the right arrangements. And so right now we have our soft schedule released, which just kind of mentions the times and locations of the overall timeline of the weekend, but the specific lineup and schedule will be released within a week or two. You can check back on our Instagram, which is acab.2018, or at our website, which is acab2018.noblogs.org, and those should be out. We'll also be handing out the schedules at the welcoming table in a handheld form, which will have a lot of other exciting news and updates and maybe even a few surprises. So definitely come get one of those.
I think also just to kind of loop it back to the previous question, we decided this year to be a little bit more upfront with what's happening at the book fair and use different modes of promotion to try and make it more open and in view, in the public view, which comes with that risk of attracting people we don't want there. But I think I would argue that it's important for us as anarchists to continually make our case as openly as possible, because one of the things I think is that when people hear and understand what anarchism can mean, it's a pretty convincing argument to them, So if we don't do everything undercover, I think it's helpful. That does run risks, but this year we decided to do that.
Yeah, we wanted to make it more accessible to other communities, because the issues and projects and struggles that are going to be presented upon, I think, are so important. And I think these are things that people need to hear. And so we are also, because of that, taking the precautions necessary to make sure that we have extra security in that way.
And one of the hopes, beyond the fact that a book fair brings a bunch of people from around the region or beyond to a specific location because they're interested in anarchism for whatever reason, we're hoping that this will also, again, forge more ties in our local community, because we're always trying to collaborate with people doing their work in town. Even when we don't always share the exact same analysis, we can help each other out.
Another question about accessibility is, are the spaces where the events are going to be happening wheelchair accessible? And is there any translation services, or have there been any requests for translation services made?
I think everything's wheelchair accessible. It's interesting, one of our panels is on language justice.
Yeah, it's the very first one on Friday.
And you bring up a point that we don't have a translation system in place right now. That's something that I've worked on other things and tried to get that too, and I think like that's something that's super necessary. So I don't know, that gives me a thought to reach out to those folks that I know they have a group of people who provide those services, and that's another place where funds would go.
Yeah, we have a really amazing local group that offers those services, but they do cost monies.
Well, they do really good work.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if promotions haven't been being made in Spanish, for instance, as the majority other language that would be spoken around here, then maybe people from those communities wouldn't necessarily be drawn to the event. It's another like catch-22 scenario, but maybe something to think about for next year's organizing if it happens next year.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we're always trying to like look inwards and think critically about the ways we are engaging in our community, and all you can do is be better than you were the day before or the year before, so that is something to think about for next year.
Personally, what are the best, not ACAB, not Asheville, but best book fair experiences that you've had personally? Assuming that you've been to book fairs before ACAB.
To talk about a recent experience, I went to the last Atlanta Radical Book Fair, which isn't explicitly anarchist, though there are anarchists, I think, involved in the planning of it, and they do a very different thing than what we're doing. They did it all through one day with no concurrent panels, so it was one room, and every event happened in the room one after the other, and throughout the whole time there were vendors in a room. And I thought that created a really cool space where, you know, if you went to all the things and other people went to all the things, you were in that room with everyone all together asking questions. But it was like a much more it was a really controlled space in that way. And I think we're doing something different, and like, yeah, we're aiming for something different. I really liked that book fair. And also Atlanta is like a different kind of place than Asheville is, so it had a different sort of focus and different people involved in it. But yeah, that was just a comparison that came to mind.
I wish I had thought about this question ahead of time. I've been to a number of book fairs and zine fests and other gatherings of this sort around the country, and right now I can't think of anything.
I think you can't think of any other ones because ours is the best.
Ooh. I know. I didn't want to say it, but like, there's something just really nice because I think we cover all the bases. I don't want to say this though, but it's true.
We have a really good book fair. You should come to it. We're not trying to fight about it. We just do it well.
No, this is bad. Don't say that. But yeah, we do it best. We have theory and analysis section. We have the reflection and like whatever section. We have the place where people meet and connect. We have the place for joy and celebration. We have it all. You know.
And just like a whole bunch of sweet folks in our community that are like gonna be around and you get to meet and hang out with. And people traveling who are also sweet and awesome. So.
Yeah.
Well, where can people find out more? Can you list out the contacts again and the forms that they should be filling out if they're thinking about coming? I
said it before and I'll say it again. The website is acab2018.noblogs.org or acab.2018 on Instagram. Most of the information you will need to attend will be listed on our website. We have forms for housing and our email contact. But if you want like live updates and other things going on around North Carolina and Asheville, just follow the Instagram. It's pretty active and really engaging and keeps good track about like what's going on in a personal and detailed way that the website does not.
And this year we have a Facebook page. Then we'll be putting events on too, so you might be able to plug into things happening around the book fair and during the book fair through that. What's the name?
It's just another Carolina Anarchist Book Fair.
It's another Carolina Anarchist Book Fair 2018.
thanks a lot, both of you, for talking.
Thank you for talking to us and talking about this event. I hope that everyone who's listening to this will show up. You better make it out there. And introduce yourself personally to me, though I'm nameless.
Come to the welcoming table. We'll all be there. We're really excited to see all of you. And yeah, thanks for having us.
May Day 2018 witnessed many large manifestations around the world. Many of these demonstrations and celebrations were quite conflictual, and many of these included anarchists. An impressive show of rebellion that caught the eyes of many anarchists in the Anglophone West was that in Yogyakarta, Indonesia. We're joined by an anarchist from Indonesia to talk about the events of May Day. Would you please introduce yourself for the audience?
Oh yeah, Tristan here. I'm an anarchist living in Yogyakarta. I actually don't belong to any other group or collective, but I cooperate with other groups also and other cooperatives, and I'm also part of the individuals who are making the Committee Against Feudalism on 2018 May Day in Yogyakarta. Our aim was to create tension and street confrontation with the authorities so that the investor in Yogyakarta, the resistance against them will be louder, the resistance against them will be harder, and it will be a difficult condition for them to invest here. So that was the main aim. And also like the so-called public, I don't know, they can define as public because mostly these are just street thugs that some of them I know personally, and they were being provoked by the intelligence, like the police with no uniforms.
Videos show conflict arising with people out of uniform as well. Were they vigilantes or out-of-uniform cops, or, like in Jakarta, centrist labor unions?
Actually, most of them, we call them here as Intel. Intel is a police who wears no uniforms. About the police response, the blockades that we were expecting to provoke the police to attack us, it lasted quite long. So they were waiting for us to get weaker, and so they can manage to mobilize more police and surrounding us into the university. That's the thing that we don't know and we don't anticipate before.
How long did the blockades last? About how many anarchists participated, and what sort of resistance was shown? The video, for instance, that I saw showed a police outpost being dismantled and fireworks.
Lasted for more than 3 hours, I think. During the blockades, the anarchy is starting to destroying things like police post, and one of the police vehicle got burned by the Molotovs. Actually, the flare is a sign for us to get offensive. So I think it's like when the blockades lasted for an hour, the others were being impatient, and so one of the anarchists started the flare, and everything just got out of control. And that's what we were aiming. So I don't really object with individuals who are attacking properties or even like the cops, but it wasn't really this scenario we want to be happen. We want the police to react, and we want a direct confrontation, because that was we were planning for. It should be noted that the street that we are blockading is actually the only strategic street towards the airport. So Yeah, I think in terms of making economic damage to this to the government and to halt the circulation of capital, uh, that also we were aiming to do.
What happened to the anarchists who were arrested? Who are they? Are they part of any group or tendency? And how are they doing?
During the first arrest, when the police chased down the anarchists to the university, the only anarchist who were arrested is Brian Valentino, or known as Uchil. Actually, he was fainted because a rock hit his head, and he fell down. And when he got up, he already got beaten up and arrested. The other anarchists who were in the committee were not arrested. They managed to avoid the arrest. Ochil is an example of this committee. He is very he's an individual. He doesn't belong to any groups. He is from North Sulawesi, Manado, which is quite far from Yogyakarta, Java. But since this issue against feudalism, which is just even in like state democracy, this is an anomaly. So yeah, he decided to come to participate in, and he is very actively doing things in the May Day action, like putting banners on the top of a police post and throwing molotovs out to the police. I can't really define Uchil tendency. I think it's best for him to speak of this for himself. After a week, there's 2 individuals from the committee who got arrested, but we haven't know for sure about their condition. There's some rumors, but we don't want to make any accusation or anything before we can get them a lawyer or legal aid.
What does court repression in Indonesia, and in particular Yogyakarta, look like? Are there any expectations of what the court cases might be like?
For example, Uchil's case, although the police and the Sultan tried to politicize this case, Uchil's only got like criminal laws like property destruction and arson. In Yogyakarta, the legal system is almost the same as everywhere. It's like a vicious circle of corruption and whatever. This is like a public secret, but yeah, like no one will say anything about it. We don't really have much expectation. I think from the previous experience, legal aid or lawyers only useful in assisting the defendants during the interrogation, so they won't be intimidated or being tortured. But in court, in front of the court, just like a state scenario, it's everyone knows this. If you don't have money, then yeah, you will get like long sentences. But if you do have money, you can pay them, literally pay them. This vicious circle of justice system in Indonesia, and then yeah, you can get like maybe 9 months or less. So there's no expectations really. We just hope that we can keep on supporting our comrades in prison while not getting arrested also.
Are there any types of solidarity requested, or is there a support or anti-repression committee for the arrestees where listeners can donate, or a place that we can keep up to date on their cases?
Well, in terms of solidarity, I think many things that people from outside from Indonesia can do, especially those who are labeled themselves as anarchists, or those who are against this rotten feudalistic system and the mega project. I don't know. For example, like you can boycott tourism here because Yogyakarta is one of their main profits are from tourists. So and like all of the galleries, all of the art exhibitions, and most of the cultural selling are owned by this Kraton or Sultan. So yeah, that's just one form of solidarity. Maybe making an collective open letter, or maybe sending letter to embassy. But yeah, if you want to do solidarity, we don't limit you at all in terms of strategy and tactics. For donation, you can email first to palanghitam@trisap.net. It's spelled PALANGSCORE at trisap.net. Well, there's a continuous solidarity across Indonesia, in Malang, Makassar, and in East Borneo. And for now, some of our comrades update it on the social media, on Instagram. You can find it. It's Palang, PALANG _HITAN.
What are some important social tensions for anarchists outside of Indonesia to understand? For instance, there's a sultan in Yogyakarta, mentioned by you and also in the public statement by, quote, the anarchists, unquote, after May Day. And just to note, tourism is hated everywhere. Sorry, it's such a big question.
Well, Yogyakarta is a special territory inside of an Indonesian democratic state. It is because of this historical agreement between the earlier Japanese rulers and the colonials. And up until now, the monarchy is still alive. And even in a small part of Yogyakarta, people still lives and believing in kings and royal bloods and serve accordingly. But the problem is the Sultan authority over the land ownership is the ultimate problem, because he can sell it, he can give it to and cooperate with other corporation like the new Yogyakarta International Airport, like Indomines, who are owned by Peter Sondak, and like foreign corporation from Czechoslovakia to England and India. And yeah, there's many things that can be said about this, and I can only say this in this interview in a very limited context. But I think there's already many writings about it, and some of it are already translated in English.
And we'll include some of those translated works in the link section in this podcast notes. Next question. What sort of relationship is there of the anarchist movement to Islam and to Islamic fundamentalists in Indonesia?
There is no relationship between Islam, fundamentalism, and anarchist movement. That's for sure. But as anarchists, we believe that we can choose our fate freely, and that is our ideas about freedom. It's like freedom to choose your own fate and your beliefs. So there are still many of our friends in the anarchist movement who are still identify themselves as Islam, but not fundamentalist. Fundamentalists here are very different, and we don't really connect with them. Well, in fact, most of them who knew us, they call us kafir because we don't believe in state. We tolerate people who don't believe in religion. We tolerate personal liberty and freedom, and it's against their ideas. So there's no connection between Islamic fundamentalism and the anarchist movement. There have never been. Especially some of the small anarchist collectives or anarchist individuals support or involved in LGBT movement that are still small and mostly are run by NGOs. But anarchist stance on sexual liberation and sexual orientation is very clear in here. So that there's no connection.
Sorry, it's kind of a weird question. But I guess more to the point, do direct conflicts arise besides those with the state forces representing the Sultan? Like, are there parastate Islamic fundamentalist movements that anarchists conflict with?
If what you mean is about the conflict between the political interests, it's always there. It's politics and business as usual. It's always exists, I think. Well, for example, the spontaneous slogan to kill the Sultan is one thing that cannot be co-opted by other political opposition because it is too extreme to them.
So switching up topics a little bit, can you give a little history on anarchism in Indonesia? How did it get there, and what tendencies seem strong to you today? For instance, the presence of egoist anarchist flags in Yogyakarta was notable, and there have been large anarcho-syndicalist-influenced cab strikes in Jakarta and other places. There's also the case of the FAI and IRF activity in the early 2010s with Eat and Billy that show a diversity of ideas and action.
Well, from the previous history that we know, the early anarchist ideas came from the punk movement in the early 90s. It's mostly from punks who read magazines such as Proven Existence and were influenced by bands like Crass. So during the fall of New Order regime, there have been mushrooming of punk movement in Indonesia, and there's also anarchist elements in there. Well, about the egoist flag, some significant numbers of the committee were labeling themselves as individualists. So the flag was meant for fun. Really, it is not that serious, and because most of them are students, and some of them have their own criticism towards anarcho-syndicalism and red anarchism, and yeah, mostly individuals on the committee, although I cannot speak for all of them. Many of them were influenced either by green anarchism or individualist anarchism, and very wide range variants of anarchism. So it's kind of a cocktail, really. I can't really speak about this anarcho-syndicalist in Jakarta because I don't really know much about them. But yeah, the media action in Jakarta when they were being beaten by these old union leaders, these pimps. I think at this point we kind of respect them for having the bravery to attack this kind of old tradition in this bureaucratic workers union. About the diversity of ideas, yes, we kind of talk this to other groups also and individuals, that we don't want to be defined or just copying the conflict that arose from the Western anarchists. That it's because we have a very different geography, reality, and like we live in like a within a nation state that is consisting of archipelagos, and it is very hard for us to coordinate and even to communicate to each other. So I think there's language barriers, and also we try to overcome this dichotomy, and like we don't really believe in the notion of individual versus social. It's just false, because like Godwin says that society is just a collections of individuals. I mean, like, I'm not saying that there is no subdivision in Indonesian anarchist movement, but I think we have to more and more open to each other. Like, if we disagree, we tell. I mean, like, don't be afraid of conflict. If we don't have like confrontational tactics, there will be no dynamics in our movement. So we need more and more people to speak. We need more and more people to write, to disagree, to speak out their opinions, and I think that thing, it's very crucial for the movement. So in this context, I am not speaking of what labels or what tendencies are right, but I think there are some of ideas between these tendencies that are valuable for the movement.
Can you talk a little bit about the publishing projects you engage with and the space that you help to run in Yogyakarta?
That we engage, we also like cooperate with other small publishers, so it's like more than a dozen translated anarchist books that are already published. We translated classical anarchist texts and also like the present anarchist discourse. Classical texts, mostly writings such as Bakunin, and even the mainstream publisher also published Bakunin's book, and Kropotkin, Malatesta, Emma Goldman, and other like council communist writings, and Macno. The cafe and info shop are function primarily for outreach and like making available to people that that are looking for like anarchist book, anarchist pamphlets, and spaces. In there, we also sell food and coffee. Most of the activities that were done there, it's we facilitate like student discussion groups and grassroots organization and even anarchist study group. What I understand is that I believe that every movement against capitalism and state, that they have to be like have like sharp critiques and analysis of capitalism and the organization itself. I mean, like we need to update our theory, and therefore we can put it into practice. And we need also like critical analysis, and mostly this comes from like the dynamics or even like actual debates that sometimes resort into conflicts. And for me it's fine, because conflict is endemic. It's part of our nature. So I think like if we don't have this kind of critiques, self critiques, and critiques to others, and critiques to the general system, I think we don't really have a strategy and a perspective of our struggle to move forward, because we need to update our theories and put it into practice. And as always, it will be going on like that. And that is why I think we don't have to hesitate or avoid conflict, even between the collectives or individuals in the anarchist movement. I think we have to be more louder about our problems, so that we can deconstruct the values that are not desirable for us.
Why did anarchists in Yogyakarta choose to engage so violently with authority on May Day?
Firstly, violent tactics were meant to causing like economic damage to the local government, and also like really to piss off the authorities, and really showing that our presence like as anarchists, that we will not tolerate any more of these projects. We will not tolerate their agendas that are resorting into racial issues and even like religious issues that can be very harmful if it resorting into like horizontal conflict, and we don't want that. And like also the aim of the direct action and the violent tactics is to show the investor, whether it is national or international, that they know that there are people who are resisting. I mean, like not peacefully resisting, that like we will resist, we will fight until they really reconsider to invest in Yogyakarta, because we have to make the situation not conducive for investors. To quote one of the Kulon Progo peasant, say that one of the things that the company is always afraid of is when the people are using violence.
What sorts of mega projects or large infrastructures are happening in your area? Who profits from them, and how are you resisting?
The mega project consisting of international airport, new train routes, and new ports, and new infrastructure for to smoothen the distribution of goods in Java from east to west or west to east. And these are the problems, and people who are responsible for this are locally are Sultan, because he is one of the person responsible politically claiming that all the land in Yogyakarta is his property, and this is like a feudal claim of land ownership. He cooperates with lots of investors. Like, for example, the airport will be built by the company from India, and well, I don't really have the data here with me, but I remember that two of the company are from Czechoslovakia, Prague, and London. And it will involve many multinationals, and of course these are like global capitalist agenda. This is not isolated. The mega project are not isolated to more like a national issue or national interest. This is like a global capital interest. So I think the issue of this mega project were also responsibility for other anarchists abroad, especially where the company from, such as Czechoslovakia and London. We will inform more about the list of the companies that are responsible for this.
What's the situation of the punk movement now, after violent, quote, re-education measures, unquote, had been taken by police against punks in 2011 in Aceh province?
I assume that you're talking about Aceh punk movement because we don't really know what was happening there, and there haven't been a communication between the Acehese punk and Indonesian, other punks from different island. So yeah, there's still repression and Sharia law in Aceh. Until now, we don't really understand the incident that happened on 2011.
Can you describe the anarchist infrastructure in the country? Are there info shops, bookshops, squats?
Well, if you're asking about country, Indonesia have lots of islands, different language, different cultures. We have very different geography. So if you talk about the anarchist movement, in Makassar it's different, in Manado it's different, in Bandung it's different. We cannot really talk about one area in here because Indonesia consists of lots of archipelagos. I will talk about Yogyakarta because it is a student city. We have like anarchist library from early 2004. Years before, we have like info shop and anarchist coffee shop named Libera, where we used to sell anarchist books and that we publish on our own and also published by small book publishers. But there is also like info shop in another area, for example in Makassar and Manado, that is like a different island and very far away from Java.
How does anarchism in your scene engage with challenging sexism and patriarchy? Is there a strong anarcho-feminist current in Yogyakarta?
So yeah, in short, I think people who will question this, they have to come here first. They have to understand the struggle of the women's here, like the historical struggle, the ethnicity, like their background, like it's very different. Like you can't really like implementing these ideologies, because it will exclude you. There's things like Christian patriarchy that are happening, that are being a tradition here, and we are challenging that. Like most of the, even like the liberal are challenging that, but I think it is not as simple as that, because even like ordinary boys doesn't even understand the definition of sexism or patriarchy or gender. So with the knowledge that Indonesian have this worst education according to Western standard, moreover, we have to have this ambitious approach to the grassroots communities to these issues. I think it is like a lesson for most people, like me, like you, like people of all places. Like we share, for example, we share the same economic critiques of Marx, or existential critiques of Nietzsche or Stirner. If we don't really understand different geography, different localities, different history, and we try to implement our own truth, I think that is very false. That is not anarchistic. I think like the relevance of anarchism is to understand your localities, to understand yourself, to understand the people on your surrounding. I think that is the most important. Otherwise, this is just a useless ideology. What we try to do here is very difficult, because usually anarchism are very different. It's a Western, so we have to localize it. We have to understand, like I say before, about our own geography, our own localities. These are what we are trying to implement. This is not a very easy thing to do. This is very difficult, and there are only like a small part of anarchists who understand this, who are willing to do this. And that's why we don't only need like analysis and theory, we also need practice. We need both.
Alongside making the long journey to visit and learn about what goes on in Java, do you have any suggestions for how people from afar can learn more and keep up on activities of you and your comrades?
I think what you mean about this happen in the day, or there are dynamics in leading to this approach of thinking anarchism as a redefinition of our localities, of our approach to life, and of our understanding of our own reality, is also a dynamic, like from the early anarcho-punk movement, and then when the anarchist movement in Indonesia began to mushrooming and starting to take the ideas seriously, and starting to trying to implement the theory into practice. So that's when the contradiction happened. I think most of us understand it when we practice theory, and we know that like we have this a lot of contradiction around us, and some of them are good, some of them are bad, and we should dissect it, we should analyze it, we should know because that's how we should understand our own theory and our own practices.
Do you have any last words to anyone of conscience about how to offer forms of solidarity if they're visiting Yogyakarta?
Well, my last word is, like many people, even punks and even some anarchists came to Yogyakarta. And they knew that some of the places, some of the art places, some of the music places are owned by the Sultan. And for me, one of the strategy I think that will be effective is to boycott those places and to boycott the artists who are cooperating with the Sultan and who support the mega project. We have to alienate these people, because these people are the one who are responsible for confirming and recuperating most of the grassroots struggle in Yogyakarta into believing that Sultan is a democratic and well-mannered person and all of those bullshit. I think it is important for foreign anarchists that comes to Jogja to boycott places that are owned by the Sultan, or if they have better strategies when they came here, please contribute, because this mega project, this infrastructure are very connected with international interests, and that's why I think we should be all in this together.
If you're in the United States and you want to express your outrage to the Indonesian government, you can find their embassies in multiple cities around the country. There's an embassy in San Francisco, there's one in Los Angeles, one in Houston, one in Chicago, and the Consulate General of the Republic of Indonesia in New York is on 68th. Check out the notes for this episode for phone numbers and addresses for those places. I'm sure that Uchil and other folks would appreciate your solidarity. Make some noise! As Tristan says in the interview, much of the resistance of the Committee Against Feudalism that raged against the police on May Day in Yogyakarta was in order to damage government facility, as well as to undermine trust of local and international investors in the building of the new Yogyakarta International Airport, or NYIA. The airport has already led to the displacement of people in the farming village of Kulon Progo, destroying trees and livelihoods, and authorities cut power supplies to intimidate residents into selling their ancestral lands in this southern coastal village, but still 30 households resist. In place of the farmlands where 11,500 people lived, cultivating peppers, eggplants, and watermelons, fishing, among the erosion and tsunami-defending dunes that dot the coastline, the state would prefer a 2,000-hectare airport city, or aerotropolis, containing hotels, industrial zones, shopping centers, an expanded port, and other tourist ventures. The airport would be operated by Angkasa Pura, owned by the Indonesian military. It would be constructed by the U.S. company Landrum & Brown, who has offices in New York City, Orlando, San Francisco, Tampa, Cincinnati, Bogota, Boston, and Chicago. Alongside L&B is the India-based mega-project conglomerate GVK. GVK is named for its founder, Gunupati Venkata Krishna Reddy, and is also active in Australian coal mining spheres. A Czech corporation involved in design of the NYIA is AGA Letice SRO. It's based in Prague. Mott MacDonald, kind of like Matt McDonald, but Mott MacDonald is an employee-owned consultancy firm, which also plays a role in this mess. Finally, Rajawali Corpora, has a heavy hand in five-star hotels and media ownership, is involved, and it's currently being run by the billionaire Peter Sontag, and would be involved in hospitality, quote-unquote. The Sultan, Hamengkubuwono X, the second in his lineage to be given the official governorship of Yogyakarta, is grabbing public and communal lands for sale and gifts to investors, selling it off for mega projects like the NYIA, and personally profiting, claiming a feudal ownership of the land. The real losers in the situation are the people of Yogyakarta. The real winners are the Sultan, the global rich, and these mega project proliferators who choose short-term profits over community autonomy and ecological health. Since we didn't really get into it, I'd like to touch on what I understand of some of the racism that Tristan refers to. Among other things, the Sultan's continued use of the 1975 law that is now in conflict with the Indonesian national law against discrimination is another tool at grabbing land and fueling ethnic populism. The law excludes ethnic Chinese Indonesians, despite having been in Indonesia for many generations, and other non-quote pribumi, unquote, or ethnically Indonesian people from owning land, and has been used to repress ethnic minorities in the archipelago in the past. This law also serves the Sultan by denying property rights. It allows his government, therefore him as feudal lord, to retain the rights to the land. A few articles on resistance in Indonesia can be found in English at agitasi.noblogs.org, that's Agitasi, a site for Indonesian counterinformation and analysis. If you can't read it, learn Indonesian, or use Babelfish or Google to translate it. And you can check out way more links in our show notes. If you want to share acts of solidarity, or to get more information on how to donate funds, you can drop an email to palanghitam, PALANGHITAM, at riseup.net, or matata, MATATA, at riseup.net. Or you can PayPal funds to deliriousinc16 at gmail.com and mention in the memo that the funds are for Uchil. If you'd like to learn more about the publishing ventures Tristan talks about or the radical space in Yogyakarta, you can search Libera, which is the name of the space, and it's Libera, and a request for funding that lists its programs can be found there as well. To find past episodes of The Final Straw, you can subscribe to us in your favorite podcatching device or visit the website thefinalstrawradio.noblogs.org for 8 years of free audio. If you'd like to hear us on your local radio airwaves, contact your community radio station and tell them to check out the radio tab on our website. Or you can reach us via thefinalstrawradio at riseup.net and we'll try to help in the process. We are up on the most obnoxious social media platforms and can easily be shared after we air. Finally, if you appreciate the work that we do, please consider a one-time donation via PayPal or, better yet, a recurring one via Patreon. If you visit our website and click on the Donate tab, there are instructions there, or you can visit patreon.com/TFSR. All of our content is free, but $1 or more a month can be very helpful to keep us going. Plus, there are some pretty awesome thank yous available.